Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. I'm Pinky Webb. Today on the program, senators want to discuss with President Bongbong Marcos their resolution condemning China's harassment of Filipino fishermen and Coast Guard in the West Philippine Sea. And will the lower chamber follow suit? And later, the Marcos administration seeks 9.2 billion pesos in confidential and intelligence funds in the proposed 2024 budget. Senate President Migz Zubiri and Gabriela Party List Representative Arlene Brosas joins us in the program. President Bongbong Marcos met with former President Rodrigo Duterte yesterday to discuss the latter's meeting with Chinese leader Xi Jinping in July. This comes after Mr. Marcos said he wants his predecessor to disclose the agenda of the meeting in Beijing and how it will affect the Philippines. On the same day, Marcos was also set to meet with the senators who wanted to discuss their unanimously passed resolution condemning China's harassment of Filipino fishermen and the Coast Guard in the West Philippine Sea. Let's go straight to the source of the story. First off, we have Senate President Migz Zubiri. SP, thank you for your time. Welcome back to the source, sir.
Thank you very much, Pinky. Thank you very much to everyone watching. Good day, po.
Sir, tell us first about that dinner you had with the president last night.
Oh, it was actually a very cordial, casual get-together. Nothing serious was being discussed. The president's been wanting to have this dinner for quite a while. It's been a year since he started office, and we've always said if we could host a dinner with all the senators to get together with all of them. So a few topics were discussed, but nothing very serious. Nothing very serious. Although he just had come from the meeting with then former President Duterte in Malacanang. So, of course, he was just talking about how the president looked very well, looked quite happy, the former president rather. And that's about it. And basically, what he mentioned to us was during the duration of the President Duterte's meeting with Xi Jinping, the topic of the West Philippine Sea never was brought up. Apparently, it was never, according to the president, casually saying that it was never brought up. It was actually President Duterte who mentioned, according to the president, it was actually President Duterte who mentioned to Xi Jinping that on the issue of the West Philippine Sea, look kindly to the Philippines. That's what, according to the president, what he said. So it was actually the president, former president, who shared his thoughts that China should look kindly to their neighbor in the south, the Philippines. And so that's as far as the topic had gone, and we discussed all other topics.
But that's
around
it
the
in
sun.
terms of the conversation between President Xi Jinping and former President Rodrigo Duterte. Yun lang po yung na-share.
Yes, that's the only thing that was shared. Maybe there were other topics that were discussed. It could have been a executive session, so I'm not at liberty to discuss. And the president did not discuss much about it as well. So it was all right. We discussed more about flooding and agriculture, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, I'm sure you're going to want to talk about that, especially agriculture, especially rice importation. But when President Rodrigo Duterte, the former president, says, look kindly, sinabi ho ba ni Pangulong Bongbong Marcos kung ano ang sinagot ni President Xi Jinping?
Wala. He just mentioned he mentioned that, and it was the end of the topic, actually. And I don't know any other information. Okay. That's the honest to goodness truth, Nikki.
Okay.
That's the honest to goodness.
But what are your thoughts on the suggestion of Senator Alan Peter Cayetano to appoint former President Rodrigo Duterte as special envoy to China? Do you think that is a step in the right direction? Should this be done?
Why not? Anyone who can help diplomacy in this part of the world, this economic zone of ours, exclusive economic zone, would be a big help. It could be former President Rodrigo Duterte. It could also be Alan. Why not Senator Alan as well to help in the back channeling, since he's quite close to some of the officials there, being the former Secretary of Foreign Affairs. We, of course, the President knows our stand on Senate Resolution number 718 we passed the other day, but we didn't really touch much of it because it was very cordial and very light dinner. The President didn't ask about the resolution. I think he knows that
Sorry, sir, he
we had a
did not?
meeting earlier during the week with the Secretary of Foreign Affairs. So whatever the Secretary of Foreign Affairs divulged to us had the imprimatur of the President, I'm sure.
So, sorry, sir, to clarify, you said the President did not ask about this Senate Resolution 718. Did not, ho ba?
No, he was familiar with it. He knows the stand of the Senate. He knows the stand of the Senate very well. And during the conversation, we just mentioned basically that we had this stand with the Senate. And that's why we touched very quickly on the issue of former President Duterte. And then we changed topics after that into agriculture and the flooding that's going on all over Luzon, particularly northern Luzon, in this province, and Ilocos Sur, and of course what's happening in Bulacan and Pampanga. So that's the gist of the meeting, Pinky.
Okay.
We didn't want to impose or discuss anything serious at that time because this dinner was really for a casual and cordial dinner. But what is important, Pinky, I think we should focus on the resolution. I think it's important to
Sir,
know that to take note. The Senate went.
I actually want to talk about that, sir.
Together, united together. Yes, we united. No bipartisan. There was a bipartisan vote on the issue, and we all voted in favor of the resolution. Napakasimple ng resolution na ito. We're condemning China for the continued harassment of Filipino fishermen and its persistent incursion into our exclusive economic zone and violations of the decision of the arbitral court, which basically grants us the exclusive economic zones in these areas. My worry, kasi, Pinky, is they're pushing in, and we should push back. When I say they're pushing in, they're already making their playground the areas of between Pag-asa and Palawan. Remember that Pag-asa, Pinky, and for all our viewers there, you have to understand that Pag-asa Island is already a municipality of Palawan, and it's about maybe 140 nautical miles from Palawan. In between that's Ayungin shoals and other shoals that are very close to the Philippines, where it has always been time and time before generations before us, the natural fishing ground of the fisherfolk in these areas. And what really shocked us, and that's why we took action on this, Pinky, was 3 weeks ago in Sabina Shoal, which is about 18 nautical miles. Let me repeat, 18 nautical miles from northern Palawan. There was a swarm of about 200 ships. 100 ships were militia and part were Navy and Coast Guard boats. And we have the photos to prove it. We've had the information and the documentation to prove it. Why were they lingering there for several weeks? Now, ang punto ko dito, they're only 40 nautical miles from Malampaya. Malampaya, Pinky, that's how close they were to us. And again, 80 nautical miles from the mainland of northern Palawan. So on a clear day, possibly in northern Palawan, if you had a telescope or a binocular, you can see the ships.
Yeah.
That's how close they are. Ito yung Palawan, Pinky, di ba? Dito Pilipinas, dito Palawan. Nandito po sila.
Yeah.
Napakalapit. Ngayon, ang punto namin dyan ay ganito. Ang pinakamalapit na mainland coast of China, which is the Hainan province, which is the island right below the mainland of China, is almost 600 nautical miles. 600 nautical miles, Pinky, from their territory. So I know there's no rhyme nor logic, no rhyme or reason nor logic that will dictate that this area is theirs.
Yeah.
It's ours. That's why the 9-dash line has to be contested.
Yeah.
Because the 9-dash line is ridiculous as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And we have to push back, because if you don't push back, there will be coming closer to the Malampaya gas plant, and later on you find them already in the shores of Palawan. So we have to do a pushback, and that's what we're doing now. And it's okay to be the bad cop in government. We have to remind
Wait
those
a
in
minute.
government that, hey, we can't let this happen.
Who is the bad
I know
cop
there's a
here?
diplomatic
SP.
balancing act that has to be done, but we have to push back.
Who is the, sabi mo nga kailan may bad cop dito? Sino ho ba yung sinasabi yung bad cop? Yung Senado because of this resolution?
Yeah, the Senate has to stand united.
Yeah.
We don't look at districts, Pinky, if you know the difference between us and our dear colleagues in Congress. We have districts in Congress. I used to be a congressman for 3 years. I mean, for 3 terms, 9 years. The focus basically is internal. Of course, they can come up with a stand because they're still act as national leaders. But in the Senate, we're all elected nationally. We're all elected at large, and we have to make a stand when there are issues that concern national sovereignty. You know, treaties are discussed in the Senate. It's approved in the Senate. So therefore, we discuss a lot of foreign relations issues. Of course, ultimately, the decision of the state or the decision of the president is the ultimate foreign policy. We totally agree with that. There's no debate that it's coming from the president will dictate foreign policy for the country. However, the Senate can give a sense of the Senate. It can relate to the president on how we feel, on options that we can give on how to handle this particular issue in the West Philippine Sea. And we did that, Pinky. We gave out 5 recommendations, and it's in our last whereas clause, together with Senator Risa Ontiveros. We both authored this, and unanimously supported by all members. And the last whereas clause, we gave number 1. First of all, we have to continue dialogue with the Chinese government. No, you cannot abandon, you cannot unilaterally or multilaterally discuss this without discussing with the Chinese government. We continue to file diplomatic protests. We continue to reach out to them. We continue to let them know that, hey, you're going way too close to the economic zone. We got to push you back. I mean, we have to do that. But if they don't listen, and after 200, right now there are about 90 to 100 diplomatic protests, Pinky. After 200 diplomatic protests and they still don't listen, we have options that we shared with the Foreign Affairs Department, and Secretary Manalo was there when we discussed this. If I may, Pinky, do you want me to?
Yeah, I have it actually. I actually have it, and I'll read it quickly because I need to go on a break. The first was, of course, bring international attention to China's harassment and continued violation of the ruling in the Permanent Court of Arbitration. As you met, number 2, use international fora to rally multilateral support for the enforcement of the arbitral ruling. Number 3, engage with like-minded countries to call on China to respect the ruling. And then the 4th one is where I want to focus on, sir, because initially, it was your sentiment, and I do remember you agreed that you wanted to urge the DFA to forward a resolution before the UN General Assembly in September, and you stopped short of doing this with number 5, file a resolution before the UNGA calling for the cessation of all harassment and violation of the Philippines' rights in the West Philippine Sea. Sir, the question is, bakit ho hindi ito ginawa ngayon dito sa resolution na to urge the DFA to forward this, to bring this up, to file a resolution before the UNGA? Why did you decide to wait?
Well, diplomacy is, naman, Piggy, diplomacy is the realm of several possibilities. You know, it's like compromise, and basically, the first resolution was filed by Senator Risa. Was to take it right away to the UNGA.
Right.
Some of my colleagues felt that baka wala tayong boto dun kasi may influensya din yung kapitbahay natin sa norte, sa China. Opo. They have also influence there. And their diplomats were worried that what if we don't get the majority vote? If we don't get the majority vote, will that water down our PCA or the arbitral ruling? Diba? So we have to calculate and calibrate our action. So the Secretary of Foreign Affairs, that's why I filed another resolution that I authored this time, which basically gave out these options, which the Secretary of Foreign Affairs agreed that it should not be limited only to filing a resolution to the UN General Assembly.
Got it.
Diba? So dinagdag namin yung, ibig sabihin, hindi natin binotter down to, dinagdagan natin yung mga options, pinalakas po natin posisyon ng gobyerno, which I totally agree that we could do. Anyway, it's on the table. So sabi nga ng SFA, sabi ni Secretary Manalo, that nandyan naman as number 4 itong resolution sa UNGA. So nasa table po yan, nasa lamesa po yan.
The
At anytime
option
they
is
can
there,
do so. Once
kumbaga.
all the other remedies have been
Exhausted.
of course, used and nothing still is happening.
SB, I just need to take a break. We'll be right back. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. I'm Pinky Webb, our source today, Senate President Migz Zubiri. Before I leave this topic very quickly, sir, yung pong filing a resolution before the UNGA, tingnan muna natin, sabi niyo itong options na to that you have identified. Is there a timeline? I mean, if the harassment continues, if the incursions continue, does the Senate President think after 6 months, we will pursue this call for the DFA to file a resolution before the UNGA, which happens every year, sir?
Well, I don't want to come up with the hypothetical scenarios because that's what it is. It's hypothetical scenarios. We don't know what can happen. I mean, our neighbors in the north can soften up and decide to just push back themselves. If they don't do that, and there's an increase in tensions between our Coast Guard, our fisher folk with the militia of the Chinese Navy, and together with the Coast Guard of China, I think definitely we'll make a recommendation to take it up to the UNGA. As a matter of fact, I had a meeting last Tuesday night with the ambassador to the United States, to the Philippines, United States ambassador to the Philippines, Mary Kay Carlson, and she mentioned that we will have their support and all their allies' support, including members of the European Union, if that happens. As a matter of fact, Pinky, it's a snowball effect because apparently I found out in the news that India also made the same declaration that they are not supporting the 9-line claim of China.
Okay.
And you know, India's part of BRICS. That's part of their. They have a group of Brazil, India, China, no, and all these other countries that came together for economic reasons under the Russian and China rule of this organization.
Okay. All right.
Leading the organization. And they also said, you know, we're not in favor of the 9-line. So who knows? We may be able to get a majority vote, but at this point in time, we have to calibrate well, study it well, and we're giving the Secretary of Foreign Affairs options to do other things.
Yeah.
And do more things.
Basically.
And that's what's important. I think ang napakalaga nito ay ipakita natin ang galit natin sa kanila. We have to show them how angry we are to what they are doing in our territory. Let me again repeat, Pinky, no? If this was 80 nautical miles from the shores of Russia, or 80 nautical miles from the shore of the United States, or even 80 nautical miles from England, feeling ko, lahat yan papalag. You know? They're going to really send their navy and their ships and push back and apprehend these militia ships. So we have to do the same. At the same time, when I'm saying this, budget season's coming up. We got to help our Navy. We got to help our Coast Guard. We got to get bigger ships. We've got to help our BFAR, Bureau of Fisheries, give our fisher folk also larger fishing vessels which can swarm the area and finally, you know, have our permanent fishing fleet there, claiming what is truly and rightfully theirs.
Okay.
Na Filipino fishing communities.
Senate President, I have a minute left. Could you just tell us what was discussed with the President in terms of flooding? There are over 100 areas now under a state of calamity. What could be the immediate solution or short-term plan?
Well, he's very concerned. He was very concerned last night, and during the course of the dinner, siyempre, tinitignan niya yung cellphone niya, natitingin po siya ng mga updates kung ano nangyayari. And he was, every time he looked at his phone, he was like sighing, you know, it's like a sigh of sadness, and we have to send things here to this province, we have to send more relief goods to this other province. I think he instructed the DPWH to come up with a master plan. Itong baha na ito, Pinky, has been hounding us since I was born in 1969. I think this problem is becoming, and it's getting worse because the length of the time that the water stays logged in, waterlogged areas, is longer than it was before. Dati, after 1-2 days, mawawala na yung baha. Ngayon, linggo-linggo, nandun pa ang baha. Parang naging Venice na ito. no, parang the city of Venice in Italy. So we have to have a long-term plan.
Okay.
As I mentioned, how come Amsterdam, Copenhagen, they can do this? They're below sea level, they're right by the sea. Kaya po nilang super dike, mga dike na nilalagay para hindi na po umaakyat ang tubig dito. There's several factors, no? There could be, it's because maybe the closing of the sea areas from the river systems have to be dredged, have to be cleared up, the esters have to be cleared. They have to come up with a master plan. The President agrees that the DPWH will have to come up with a master plan. And kung gagastos tayo ng ilang bilyon, gawin na po natin.
Kailangan na pong gumastos ngayon.
The most important.
Opo, para hindi pa lumala ang sitwasyon. Senate President Migz Zubiri, sir, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Mickey. Mabuhay po tayong lahat.
Take care, sir. We'll be taking a short break. We'll be right back.